Hi Year 4, hope you had a good weekend. Welcome to Monday's English lesson. Please write down in your paper or in your book the 11th of January 2021 with the LO to identify and use some writer's techniques. Just pause the video while you're writing that down. We're going to do a grammar starter as usual. Last week we looked at prefixes. We saw that we could add re, dis and miss to verbs to change their meaning. There are lots of different prefixes we could have used, but those are the ones we focused on. This week we will look at suffixes. Suffixes are word endings like ing, ed, shun, able. There are lots of them. I could add suffixes to many root words to change the meaning. So the root word rain becomes raining or rained. Run becomes runner. Did you notice what letter got doubled there? And love becomes lovable or loving. Again, did you spot what happened to the E? Okay, in this task for our starter, what we need to do is match the root words to the correct suffix. So on the left-hand side of your page, write down the 5 root words: magic, mix, teach, press, and invent underneath each other, just as you can see here. And then on the right hand of the page, you write down the suffixes sure, shun, and chur. Once you've written them down, you're going to draw lines to match the root word to the correct suffix. Say them aloud to check them. Pause this while you're doing the task. Hopefully you've managed to match up the words to the correct suffixes, but let's have a look. So the first one is magic, and that matches up to shun, magician. But you need to take out the C at the end of magic, otherwise you'll end up with a double C. The next word is mix. Now this one goes down to chur, so then you get mixture. With teach, the suffix is press, it's sure, because it's pressure. Again, you need to take off the last letter there, just like we did for magic. So it's pressure with 2 S's only, not 3. And finally, invention. Again, you need to take the T off, otherwise you end up with a double T. Invention. Well done if you got some of those right. If you didn't, that's okay. Just correct them now. You can pause the video while you're doing it. Okay, our grammar starter is done. Well done. Now we're going to look at these writer's techniques that we talked about in our LO today. So we're finding 3 techniques. The first one is an expanded noun phrase. The second is short sentence. And the third is expressive verbs. So I'm going to read out the paragraph, see if you can spot anything while I'm reading, then we'll go through it. He wandered over the hillside and through the dark and tangled forests where everything began, then out again along the muddy cattle tracks. He searched in the long thatch grass, taller than his own head. He climbed the slopes of the high mountain all the time, hoping that the calf might hear, but also because he felt so alone. His shouts echoed off the cliffs. The river roared in the valley below. Right, I'm going to get my highlighter and see if I can do this. So I'm going to look for expanded noun phrase first. Let's just go through. He wandered over the hillside and through the dark and tangled forests where everything began. That's a nice one. So let's highlight that one. The dark and tangled forests where everything began. So the author has used a noun phrase there where they could have just used the noun forest. Okay. We could have also had the long thatch grass, taller than his own head. That's another nice noun phrase that he's used instead of grass, and it really describes it and helps us imagine the scene. The next thing I'm going to look for is a short sentence. This is a bit more obvious. I'm sure you spotted a couple at the end here. So a short sentence, we've got two. His shouts echoed off the cliffs and the river roared in the valley below. I notice that both of those are about the sense of hearing. And I'm just going to highlight that first one. His shouts echoed off the cliffs. The final technique we're looking for is expressive verbs. I wonder if you've spotted any. There could be a few in here. So let's go through. He wandered over the hillside. Okay, I'm going to go for wandered because it tells me somebody who doesn't really know where they're going or they're looking for something. And through the dark and tangled forest where everything began. Then out again along the muddy cattle tracks. He searched. That's a good one. In the long thatched grass, taller than his own head. He climbed the slopes of the high mountain. Should we have climbed? Let's go for that one as well. All the time, hoping is good, hoping that the calf might hear, but also because he felt so alone. His shouts echoed off the cliffs. We'll definitely have echoed, that's a great word. The river roared in the valley below. If you get all those expressive verbs together, it really gives you a feeling. So wandered, searched, climbed, hoping, echoed, and roared. They give this piece of writing some atmosphere. What kind of feeling do you think you get from those expressive verbs? The first technique I want you to look at is expanded noun phrase. The dark and tangled forests where everything began. The is a determiner and it tells us something. It tells us he knows this place. If he'd said a dark and tangled forest where everything began, wouldn't have had the same meaning. The way he said the means that it's a place that the person knew. But what is the feeling we get from dark and tangled forests where everything began? Have a look at it. What feeling does it give you as a reader? Well, I thought the phrase dark and tangled makes it sound like a confusing place. Where everything began is mysterious. So I get the feeling that it's confusing and mysterious just from that phrase. The short sentence we picked out was his shouts echoed off the cliffs. Do you notice there are no adverbs or adjectives to describe in this short sentence? It's very, very small, hardly any detail, but it gives us a feeling. Sometimes authors like to let your imagination do the work. I felt this short sentence makes the person seem small and lonely. The third technique I want to focus on today is expressive verbs. If we put all the expressive verbs together in a pot, what do we get? We have wandered, searched, climbed, hoping, echoed, and roared. What feeling do you get when you put all those words together? I feel that the verbs give the feeling of desperation and loneliness. So we can see that those three writing techniques have given us a place that sounds confusing, mysterious. That was the expanded noun phrase. A person who sounds small and lonely, and that was just that tiny short sentence. And a feeling of desperation and loneliness, and that was from the expressive verbs. All these are clever techniques that writers use to make us imagine, feel emotion, and read on. Have a look at this picture. Let's try using the three techniques with this weird landscape. So the first thing I want to do is look at expanded noun phrases. I have a noun phrase here. The mountains touched the sky. I want you to expand it. Change it into an expanded noun phrase. Do you remember the one that worked in Fly, Eagle, Fly? Was the dark and tangled forest where everything began. How can you make the mountains touch the sky have more feeling for the reader? Have a go at adding and making it an expanded noun phrase. Pause this while you're doing that. Okay, so I changed the phrase, the mountains touch the sky, into an expanded noun phrase, which was, the vicious purple mountains spiked the starry sky. What feeling does my expanded noun phrase give you about this place? What feeling did your expanded noun phrase give? I wonder if it was similar. The next technique we're going to try out is the short sentence. You see I've put a little man in to help you imagine. There he is. So here's a sentence that I want you to change. He shouted loudly, but all he could hear were the echoes bouncing off the rocks. I want you to make this into a short sentence. What can you take out? Perhaps you could try taking out the adverbs. Just try and make it really short so that all we're left with is a feeling, just like we had in the sentence in Fly, Eagle, Fly. Okay, my short sentence is, his shouts echoed around the rocks. What feeling do you get from this short sentence? Did your short sentence give the same feeling, or was it something different? Okay, finally we'll look at expressive verbs. Try writing about a man moving through this weird place. Use verbs that help the reader understand if he's enjoying it or not. Here are a selection of verbs to choose from. We've got bounced, trudged, crept, cowered, skipped, echoed, crunched, slurped, splashed, flowed, roared, tumbled, raced, floated, shimmered, loomed. Some of those verbs are going to give the feeling of a nice place, a cosy place, a comfortable place, or a fun place. Some of them are going to give the feeling that it's a lonely or frightening place. So choose the verbs that you want to give a certain feeling and write a paragraph using those verbs, describing a man moving through the place. Pause this while you're doing that. Okay, this is my example. He trudged through the thick river of white dust. A planet loomed over him and the stars shimmered dangerously. He roared for help but heard no reply. What feeling do you get from this description? I wonder if yours was similar. So we've now hopefully achieved the LO because you've used 3 writers' techniques. You've used expanded noun phrase, so we've got the vicious purple mountains spike the starry sky. You've used short sentence, and my example was his shouts echoed around the rocks. And you've used some expressive verbs. My examples were trudged, loomed, shimmered, and roared in that paragraph there. And I want you to move on to the final task for today. Now write half a page or more about someone wandering in this strange landscape. Think, why were they there? What were they feeling? How or why did they leave? I want you to write in past tense, which means you'll be using lots of suffixes like ed and ing. When you've finished writing, underline the words that have those suffixes. Most importantly though, use the 3 techniques we used today. So your success criteria is down here. You must use expanded noun phrases. You must use short sentences. You must use expressive verbs. And I'd also like you to write in past tense. Underline them. You could maybe use different colours for each technique after you've finished, just so that you can pick out how you got on. There might be some techniques that are easier for you than others. When you read through your work at the end, think about what kind of atmosphere you've produced. Well done. I'd really love to see your work, so send it in if you can. If you just email it to the school, it will get passed on to me. Today we focused on looking at 3 writers' techniques used in Fly, Eagle, Fly, and we had a go at using the techniques ourselves. Really good work. See you again tomorrow.